All right, friends, welcome to the Strong Life Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Evnesh. I'm with my good friend, Jason Boogerd. We have known each other for over a decade. Okay. And, my memory might be fuzzy, Jason, but I know we didn't meet at Lehigh. I believe we met at Georgia Tech. Am I correct?
I think you're right. I think it was a hammer strength clinic.
Yes.
Gosh, we're talking, and you were a speaker.
Yep.
Are we talking like 2010 or 11, somewhere in that
Yep.
ballpark?
That's it, my bro. With
Yeah,
Kurt Hester, Uncle Kurt.
Uncle Kurt. And if I'm not mistaken, Scott Cochran was also a speaker, come rolling in last
Oh,
minute and didn't even need a microphone.
I may have missed him because I flew in and flew out same day.
Yep.
John Sisk organized it,
Oh, yeah.
who I think is now in the XFL.
Yep.
And I want to give you a proper intro. Although for those listening, the video doesn't get because I don't have all the tech skills. It's the audio where I do another intro and then another outro, and I give some feedback. But what is your title at Intek Strength?
So, beginning of this year, I was named the general manager. I had been the VP of sales since 2012. And I've actually been with the company. We're approaching, at the turn of the year, this will be 23 years.
Wow. So when I met you at the Hammer Strength Clinic, you were with Intek at the time.
Correct. Yeah.
And I still have the first bumper plate that was gifted to the speakers at the Hammer Clinic at Lehigh. And every speaker got one bumper. But I called you and I said, listen, I know a lot of the big timers like to just hang it on the wall. I said, not me. I'm a lifter. So I said, I got to get another one. And so we ordered up another one. You helped me outfit my entire underground strength gym, which was in North Jersey. Unfortunately, we shut it down during COVID. Long story short, with that, it wasn't because of COVID. It was more of a kind of a bad partnership. And you're a partner slash sponsor with us at Underground Strength Con. And I wanted to bring all sponsors in of equipment companies that we use. And I've got all your barbells from specialty bars to straight bars. I've got your bumper plates at my current underground location and ordered some for my high school.
Yep. Yep. I
I
appreciate the opportunity.
well, I love working with you, and I wanted to bring you on, Jason, because a couple of things. Full transparency. I want to podcast with people who are sponsoring Underground Strength Con, but even bigger, you and I, when we chat on the phone, it's like an old bro. We just we could go forever, and then we're like, listen, somebody's got to get to work here. So somebody,
There's always
yeah,
stories, isn't there? There's always experiences that we have, and
yes,
I guess it's because in the industry maybe we're long in the tooth, or we just encounter so many different things. And I think, at least from my observation, is we both have a similar sense of humor, and have seen a lot of similar things, so we can compare notes.
yes. And what's interesting, Jason, is your role, or at least somebody, working within a fitness slash strength training equipment company. It used to be kind of there was one person doing it, but now, for example, our friend Robbie Cole, he was a high school strength coach and a physical education teacher. Was he North or South Carolina? He just retired.
South Carolina.
South Carolina. You guys just hired him. I've seen other companies like starting to bring on veteran strength coaches who can work in a consulting and sales type role where they could really educate people on, hey, this is the equipment, this is how you outfit things. And I honestly, I felt like I took that for granted until our buddy Paul Colodi and I did an in-service in the late summer, and I asked the athletic director before coming up, do you have any trap bars? And he said, what's a trap bar? And that's when I realized, like, you think just the basic knowledge is everybody, but here's
Oh,
an
no.
athletic director saying, what is a trap bar? So go back to day one. How did you start getting into the selling of fitness equipment?
So we're going back into the 90s here, and
Let's go, baby. The 90s.
I'm guessing the year was 98. And on a whim, I decided to move out to Denver. And I was actually working at a factory that made the machine that you put in the back of a pickup that actually made uh, gutters for your house. It took a big piece of sheet roll, went through, formed it, and when it comes out the other side, it made gutters. So I actually, and it was terrible. The job, I mean, nice people, but the job just wasn't cutting it. So I answered a newspaper ad. Okay, and this is
Yes.
before Indeed existed, right? And it was in the Rocky Mountain News, and it was for a health club sales position in shoot, it was on the north side of Denver, and the name of the place escapes me, and I guarantee it's no longer there. Probably hasn't been for 20 years, but took a sales position, had a real interesting general manager over there and sales manager that taught me some things, and you know, lo and behold, you fast forward, you meet some people, you go some places. You're not, I wasn't married at the time, no kids, and then ended up traveling a little bit, working in a variety of health clubs in a sales capacity, and ended up in 2000. It ended up, the odd part of this is 9/11. 9/11 had a direct impact on me changing to fitness equipment sales because I was at a gym in Council Bluffs, Iowa. And when 9/11 happened, um, everybody was glued to the TV. They wanted to see what was going on, at least in the Midwest. And people weren't getting out. There was a level of fear. There was also a level of camaraderie there, but people, they sure as heck weren't going to the gyms. And that was impacting my paycheck. Well, about the same time, I got a call from the owner of our company. He had met me on a couple different occasions and had hired another colleague who knew me a little better and had the interview and started January 2002.
So 20, we're going on 2025 soon. So yeah, close to
23.
almost a quarter century. What's the guy that taught you selling in health clubs in the late 90s? What were some of the things that stick out that he taught you regarding anything, not just selling, but just people and communication skills?
Um, One thing that stands out is don't assume. Don't look at somebody. Don't be judgmental on their goals, their status, what they want to achieve. It's easy to look at somebody and form your own picture, but he was just the dude was a drill sergeant, and that was a good thing. A lot of people couldn't work with the guy. I seem to do rather well with him because I guess I've had wrestling coaches throughout the years or football coaches where they were tough also, and it just became just part of the culture. And so this guy, I'm like, okay, he's another guy that is part of the culture. And like I said, that was the big thing of, and I still remember some of his words: never assume.
Yeah, I've heard some similar stuff. Like my buddy Joe, who we're doing the underground strength con with, Joe said something to the effect of, don't let your opinion of money, like don't force your opinion of money on somebody else. You might say
Yes.
hey, $500 a month, that's a lot of money. Somebody else might say that's nothing. And so you could never assume. And saying that, my mother-in-law, she worked as like a office manager for a metal fabrication
Hmm.
company. And I remember she had to call the local Ferrari dealer saying, my boss is going to come and buy a Ferrari, but he's going to be coming in with jeans, a ripped off flannel, sleeveless flannel, and work boots. So can somebody please help him? You're going to think like he's like a guy that's like a bum, but he's going to come in and pay for his Ferrari with cash. So she had to call ahead of time. And you are right. You don't know what people
Nope.
are thinking. What about with regards to, we had a conversation last year. You told me a school had purchased either $70,000 or 70,000 pounds of weights. What was it?
Probably dollars. That seventy
Set,
thousand pounds is that's incredibly massive for
yeah.
weight rooms.
This school had opened up, they created a field house, and $70,000 worth of weights. And I was like, whoa, where did they come up with that money? And just kind of like Paul, he told me that his superintendent came to him back in the day and said, our district has a $20 million surplus. Here's the money you can, this is, I'm giving you X dollars to put this together. What have been some of the different experiences you've had with especially the high school setting, which is exploding? And then I guess the second question, the other exploding um, area slash field is military.
So the high schools, that comes from a variety of different avenues, and quite often you can have a capital campaign. A lot of it comes down to your administration and buy-in from the administration, where PE, where training, where athletics, those are a priority and significant. Um, we've all seen the schools where you've got a strength coach who's a go-getter, and they sell the shakes. They bring in a variety of different uh, avenues where something gets sold and the profit goes towards the equipment, and it's a slow grind to get enough money to do a whole weight room. Um, some of them have a good and you sometimes, depending on private or public school, you run into challenges where they'll have a lift-a-thon, they'll have a golf outing. um, they can approach a variety of parents who want to support it. Another thing that we've seen is you dedicate a piece of equipment, you put it like a plaque on a rack,
Mm.
or a plaque up on a wall, and in exchange, that person makes a nice donation. Um, I like the plaque on a rack because it's more specific and dedicated to that family. Um, when you get into the military, it's interesting across the different branches, and we haven't been we haven't dove deep into the military like there's an opportunity. We've had pretty good success in some of the special forces because that comes from a different budget, from what I understand, and a different philosophy, because those guys have a different level playing field. They need to be elite all the time. And so they put the tools in their hands to be elite.
Yeah. When you were mentioning the high school like plaque for a
Mm-hmm.
squat rack, I was actually just thinking about that. Instead of selling thousands of protein shakes to get a
Yeah.
squat rack or to get the bumpers on the squat rack, can one person come and make the donation? And we see that in the private schools. I think in the high school, you got to really do a lot of outreach. And Ron McKeefrey, told me this way back in the day. He said, when you're the strength coach, especially if you're not at a major school, he's like, you're the custodian, you're the chief marketing officer, you're the chief operating officer. He's like, you have all these roles. And Ron did some very unique stuff. I think when he was at University of South Florida, he
Mm-hmm.
like sold shirts to alumni and gave them gym membership in the weight room during off hours, and just it was, you had to pay for like an annual fee up front. He did some real interesting things. What has been um some of the most unique experiences you've seen when somebody reaches out to you and says, hey, I got to do this fundraiser and I'm going to get back to you? What has been some unique stuff that has worked?
I hadn't heard of those stories that Ron had done. That's interesting.
I
That's
think it's
especially for,
way back
yeah.
in the day.
Oh, yeah. It's that had to have been minimum of 15 years ago when he was at South, because that was before he was at Tennessee. But so, yeah, that's in a major university, to sell a membership to the weight room instead of the rec department doing it is
I
definitely
think it would have
outside the
been
box.
20, it would he must have been there in the early 2000s, late
Yeah.
90s. He created like an alumni gym membership.
Yeah, that's cool for the weight room. But
Oh
we
yeah.
that we see that in university rec departments all the time. But your athletic weight room is traditionally off limits for everybody.
I may have the story a little bit off, but I remember him doing something with the alumni with shirts and a gym membership.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Uh, we do see it also more commonly, especially in small schools, small communities. The small Iowa school where I currently live and where I grew up, both of them have this where in order to uh, there was an agreement to provide funds for this expansion for these changes, and so they open it up on limited hours, not just the weight room, but we both have like a cardio area and some circuit machines, stuff like that, and the gymnasium and a walking track. But those are opened up for the community for usage, and that was an agreement that I believe had to go through. I didn't live here when it happened, but the bond passed because there's that nugget that the community could use it, and they do. They do. They'll go in and walk the track and use the stuff, but the majority of people really aren't actually using the weight room itself. But it got the job done.
Right. In my old town where I grew up in Edison, I believe the Metuchen YMCA went. I don't know if they added this, but they became part of Metuchen High School. And so their weight room was usable during like non-school hours, maybe during the early morning and then in the
Mm-hmm.
evening. And I think that was a way to get funds. But what
Yes.
about something like, for example, sometimes I'll go to Retro Fitness to get a protein shake. The whole gym is outfitted with Intek. Did you guys outfit? The guy who founded Retro Fitness used to live in my area, but he moved down south and he opened like they call them like wellness clinics. It's like a TRT clinic.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
did you guys get a contract or did you have to bid to do every Retro Fitness?
That was a an agreement that was I'm not positive because that was established before I was a VP of sales. Um, so I think that was established in about 2006 or 7, and I believe we had that relationship up through 2012 is my guess, 13. But um, Retro Fitness had I guess a cookie cutter type layout of their
Yes,
stuff, and because you go into McDonald's and you don't want funky looking benches and you want the Big Mac to taste exactly the same, they use the same thing. They had, at least for weights,
systems.
a cookie cutter layout so people are comfortable going from place to place. And yeah, that was an agreement from many years ago. So it's, if you're going to your local one, we haven't had that agreement for 13, 14 years, so or 12 years or so. So that's pretty cool that our stuff's still in there.
Right. I think a lot of it is the grip, the easy grip,
Correct.
the easy, and also the dumbbells.
Correct. Yep.
So here's what's interesting, Jason. It just started happening, I'd say, you know, it must have started happening during COVID or a little bit before COVID. I started seeing strength coaches. There's a big thing that gets said about strength coaches. You start as a strength coach, but it's so rare to retire as a
Mm.
strength
Yeah.
coach. Maybe you got pushed out, you got forced out, they move you into an administrative position. But now we're starting to see very similar. You guys just hired Robbie Cole, and I'm not sure what the title is, if it's sales rep or you have a specific title for it. But we're starting to see strength coaches with experience saying, and to me, rightfully so, I'm a family guy. Like, hey, I ain't working all these hours. I'm don't get to see my kids. I miss all the events. I'm going to work for a equipment company, a strength training company, and I will be like a regional rep or a regional sales manager. So why are we seeing that expansion of people when a lot of people, especially in the fitness industry, are opposite, meaning I'm holding Underground Strength Conference because I'm like, man, can we do a real strength training conference and meet people in person? Or are we just going to do everything through Instagram and TikTok and YouTube?
Mm.
So why are
Right.
we seeing the human aspect happening again in the strength training companies?
Is the question based on the strength coach becoming transitioning into a sales?
Yep.
I'll answer for myself, and this was one of the things that uh, Robbie essentially took over part of my territory because I just had a lot on my plate. And one of the things I was looking for in that person was uh, is do they most strength coaches have an itch. They need to be in the weight room. They love the weight room. They love the sound. They love helping the kids. it's an itch that they love to scratch every day, which is why they have no problem putting in the extensive hours. I wanted to know from the person that we brought on that they're done scratching that itch or had a way to, appease that itch on a limited basis. And Robbie has that. One of the other things that we was strong about was fitting into the culture, and Robbie fit right in. Um, the strength coach transition's been going on for a long time. I mean, I can name a whole bunch of them. The OG is Blair Prince. He
Where's
he
he?
used to be with the Cowboys, and now he's set and spent a number of years with Powerlift
Okay.
and now Hammer Strength. He's out of Texas, and so he's been at it for a long time. So he's the OG of that. But you know some other guys in the industry like Kelly Newhouser or Rich Gray,
I,
Lon
I,
Record have made transitions.
I know Lon. I didn't know where Lon was working before. Of course, I know Richie Gray used to work with House, and House was a strength coach for
Correct.
a long time.
Yep.
So it's interesting. I asked because with the two big expansions of high school strength and conditioning, especially many thanks to NHSCA, we're really, I don't like to use the word pushing for awareness. We're educating about, the crucial importance of an expert. Same thing with military. There's now reps working within strength training companies that just work with military
Oh yeah.
because of this, like, I was offered, to break it down, I was offered a position during COVID to work with a military slash government contract. I was offered to work with a strength training, strength equipment company. And I remember my concern was, hey, is this like government military contract going away? And the person who was in charge of everything said, it's never going to go away because the biggest concern is the mental health of the soldiers, and this is like the best way to make a positive impact on mental health. So, why companies I feel used to just have kind of maybe Texas was different because Texas had massive high school weight rooms.
Yeah.
My buddy Gino Pierce said in Allen, Texas, the freshmen have their own campus and there's a weight room for freshmen, and there's a weight room for the sophomores and up. But I guess here in my Northeast area, I feel like it's starting to grow.
I agree. It's interesting over the years to watch the different states grow and have a hot spot. Uh, I kind of feel like in high schools, it's um, more of a, you hate to use the word, but recruiting,
Yeah.
where, and maybe that's reality, but um, when there's a priority to have a good weight room and good access, not just for athletics, but for your whole student body. But also, people uh, want to bring in the students, and let's face it, the butts in the seat equal more dollars coming from the whether you're public or not, coming from the state and more revenue. So a good weight room is a good recruiting tool. There's no doubt.
I mean, we've now seen, oh man, I'd say it started happening like 15 years ago, brand new weight rooms getting completely like erected because a new coach comes in, just getting rid of and then just hiring, just bring in somebody they like. And
Yeah.
that brings me to the importance of people do business with those that they know, like, and trust. And if I like somebody and trust them and I like the equipment, I'm just going to make it happen. So do you do the outreach, Jason, to make connections, or are you just taking the incoming calls? How does it work?
Both. I mean, I remember the first CSCCA or yeah, CSCCA show we did a long time ago, and I can't remember what year that was. But I feel like we talked to a 3 day show. I talked to three people total.
Why? Why just
It,
three?
nobody knew us. We didn't have any relationships,
Oh,
and so everybody walked past.
what was your
Uh,
booth? What was
uh,
there? What equipment?
the same stuff that we have now. You've got some bumpers, some dumbbells, and you're displaying your product, but nobody knew who we were. And
How
other
come?
than being
Because you
that,
were new?
yeah, yeah, we hadn't dove into the college market yet and hadn't established any relationships. And so you become persistent and you build on those three conversations and you show up the next year and it becomes 25 and the year after that becomes 100, and all of a sudden you've actually got some credibility and some friends. um, it's a Here's a funny philosophy that I don't know who to give credit to, but this is something that's always stuck with me is if you have you ever bought something from somebody that you don't like, meaning something. I mean, yeah, we've
You
bought
got
a
to be
meal.
twisting my arm to do it.
Yeah. I mean, you've not bought a diamond ring, you've not bought a house, you've not bought a car, nothing that's of significant value from somebody you don't like. If you were going to buy a car and the sales rep was a complete turd, you're probably going to a different dealership, even if you like that car.
Yep, 100%.
So,
We just bought a
yeah.
car. I just had to buy a new truck. And I was with my wife and I was like, if she didn't have a good vibe, I knew we were out. I just knew I was ready to buy two trucks, but she didn't have a good vibe. And I was like, that's it. Like I'm not going to end up buying a truck from here. And but same thing with even outside of our industry, going to your doctor, and I told my son he started a landscaping business. He's like, I'm going to get door hangers. I go, no, listen to me. That sounds cool, but are you going to walk to 1,000 houses? I go, let me tell you something. Nobody talks to people anymore. Everything is text and email. I said, you got to knock on a door. You're going to introduce yourself. You're going to tell them that you're a local kid in the area. This is your business. And so he started, he had like, one, two, three people. Then, like one week at the end of the weekend, he's like, I got, I don't know, 10 houses, 12 houses. I go, how'd you get them? He's like, I just knocked on the neighbors' doors. I said, do you see that? Like a lot of people don't have the guts to do it. And I knew that that was a skill he had to learn. I was so ready to just like, yeah, okay, do the door hangers and do this other method. Nope. Go knock on doors like an actual human, a
Well,
real
that's a
person.
rarity these days. People actually communicating. So the people that answer the door are probably taken back and like, wow, okay, you had the courage to come and do this. I'm going to
Yeah,
give you some business. Yeah, yeah, I'd
that's
like
how
you to mow my lawn.
that's how it
Uh,
happened.
yeah, it's. I mean, I feel like we get the same thing where as a general manager, and you have my cell phone number, I'll answer the call. You're not going to an answering service. You're getting a human being, and so it's our business model that's worked. Going out and shaking hands and talking about bumpers and dumbbells face to face with somebody. Are there a lot of companies out there that are exclusively online? Yeah, and they're successful, but that's not what our business has been.
Yeah, I think you see somebody else doing something, especially strength coaches, and you're like, that's how I'll do it. But that may not have been how they started. You don't really know like the back story to how they grew. So when you and I first met, so we were in Georgia, we were at Georgia Tech, which man, that was I get goosebumps thinking about it. I had such a great time being there. It was such like an honorable experience for me. Then we met again in Lehigh. I think we got driven back to the airport in Georgia together, if I recall.
That could be, yeah. That's a
Yep.
long time ago, Zach. Come on.
I know. I'm trying to. Well, Kurt Hester sprung it up on me. He's like, "Where did we first meet?" And he mentioned I thought I had met him elsewhere, but I had forgotten that I met him at Georgia Tech because it was such a whirlwind for me to fly in the morning, get to Georgia Tech, speak, and then like an hour later, I'm driving back to the airport, flying back. I'm not like a great flyer, so I felt horrible that I forgot.
Nah, that's all good. We're not spring chickens anymore.
That's
And there's
right.
so many different stories out there and so many experiences that you can't expect to remember them all.
Right. So traveling now, JB, how much traveling are you doing now? And is it important to travel, or do you like, for example, your traveling back then was traveling to these conferences. which I feel like we've gotten away from the smaller conferences. NHSCA has now brought back, you got state clinics, but there was Hammer Strength was doing all the clinics everywhere. And then, of course, you have the big ones, NSCA, CSCCA. But now, how much traveling do you have to do? And like, what about Robbie? Does he pop into schools? And how does it work between the two of you guys? And if somebody was saying to themselves, you know what, I'm kind of done with strength and conditioning, and I still want to be involved with it, but in a different capacity. There's another guy I spoke with as well who I think was in like a private school for 20 years, and he said it's still very competitive. He's like, now I'm competing in a different way.
Mm.
I'm competing against other companies who want to outfit this weight room and that weight room. So talk to us about kind of the lifestyle behind what you do. And same thing with Robbie. He's a little bit different position than you are.
So my travel now, the bulk of it is to and from our shop, which is a 6 hour drive for me. And I do that at least once a month I head down there for a week. Uh, I live in Iowa and the shop is in Southern Illinois. I also do the primary conferences or clinics. And then there's also places where, I look at the value of time. Okay. I've got a ton of stuff that I need to do at my desk every single day. There's value in seeing a customer face to face and building that relationship and making sure that they're taken care of. But I also have to justify the time to get there. And so I do travel and visit customers a few times a year. It's not every other week like it used to be. Um, it does increase in the spring because you've got the all the clinics. I mean, if in the springtime, if you want to go to a clinic, you've got a chance to go to 3 or 4 different clinics on any given weekend. Now, Robbie, he's in a good place. He lives in Greenville, the Greenville, South Carolina area, and he's what 2 hours away from everything. I mean, if you take a 2 hour radius, and I'm kind of guessing on the timelines here. I know less than 2 hours to Charlotte, maybe 2 hours to Atlanta, plus less than 2 hours to get to Columbia to Knoxville. He's in a spot where he can just. There's a lot of opportunities out there to go and uh, shake hands and kiss babies.
So he has to get in the car and go and engage with people and get into weight rooms.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the side part of that is, he's a strength coach. He, I'm sure he's still got that itch to
Yeah,
be in the weight room, and he likes to talk shop. And
I love doing that.
there's always something to learn. Somebody's doing something different, and maybe if they're not doing something different, maybe you can offer up some advice.
I love doing that. I mean, I still love coaching. I actually just took myself off the floor of coaching at the underground. So I've been doing that for over 20 years. But I did it for like a couple reasons. Number one was I wanted to not miss, it's my daughter's senior year. I need to make sure I could take my kids everywhere. And I felt like every coach that was working for me was spending less time. So like they get hired with me and then they'd get hired elsewhere full time and
Mm.
they would move into a real solid position because we coach them to be great. And I said, man, I'm going to keep I'm going to create the learn and leave model. That's not good. So I wanted to create a learn and stay and grow model and teach them how to do it. One of the things that like I want to talk to you about that kind of like stinks for coaches is I experienced it working at this high school. I might want to work with Intek, but if I'm making a order that's like over $1,000, I have to get like one or two more comp quotes. And I love you guys, but then I get, or maybe administration doesn't even ask me, and they get a quote from some like shitty company and they just order from them. Is there a way around that, Jason, for coaches working at the high school who are doing all these comparable quotes? And, schools are a government entity. So I'm pretty sure they always go with the cheapest. They don't know what the best is. They just go with cheapest.
I don't think that's true. They don't always go with the cheapest. That depends on the relationship that you have with the administration, whether it's the purchasing agent, your principal, your AD, your superintendent. Um, that comes down to getting those individuals to buy in and help you out and explain. Hopefully they give you the opportunity to explain why it's, a bumper's not just a bumper. Okay. Or bar is not just a bar. And, what you're talking about, I know we've seen this where uh, your maintenance crew could probably say the same thing. They want to get a different lawnmower, and the purchasing agent goes and gets the cheapest one they can find on the internet, even though it's not the one that the guy has a relationship with the mechanic and understands that this particular model has all the parts in stock. And so it's good for them. We see that all the time. But again, it just comes down to having a relationship with your administration, getting them to buy in and understand, hey, this is an investment. We don't want to have to make this investment multiple times.
Yes, that's huge. I had flooring put in at my high school, not with a company I advised us to go with, and we're not even 2 years in, and I got bubbles in the rubber floor. And I think like I have those 25-pound Intek bumpers. We use them all the time. They've been in, I don't even know if I had this gym when I think I had just had this gym. So I've had those bumper plates for about 13 years now.
Wow.
And dude, I mean, they're bomb proof. We're killing them every day. And so I think, yes, I remember saying to my administration, if you buy the right equipment, our grandkids can use it. It may not look the same, but it's bomb proof. And I don't know, maybe some people don't think long term. What's maybe the difference, Jason, when you're working with like a smaller guy? So for example, when I order from you, sometimes I just order one pair of bumpers at a time. It's not a big order. Whereas you could get an order for a health club, a NFL team, a collegiate weight room, which could be absolutely massive. What's kind of the difference there, and why is it important to work with even the smaller guys? Because we have a lot of small warehouse gym, fitness studio type followers listening, and that'll attend Underground Strength Con. You know, why do you guys still take care of the quote unquote small business?
Well, that's actually easy. That's the backbone, because to earn the big jobs, to earn the pro teams, to earn the massive weight rooms of Power Four football, stuff like that, you had to take care of the little guys. You had to get there first. You had to have your foundation first, and that comes from answering the phone and being responsive to everybody early on, and acknowledging the little guys. And because that was the business, if you go back 20 years, that was a business that was there. And I think we had to earn the bigger stuff over time, but you can't forget where you came from. I enjoy the having the conversations myself with everybody. Just because somebody's not necessarily from a pro team or a Power Four school doesn't mean you can't learn something, or doesn't mean that they're not bringing something interesting to the table. I had some conversations with a gentleman out of Minnesota that lives by himself. He's 60 some years old, and he's got a garage dedicated to training himself, and he loves to lift heavy. It was great conversation twice last week. And he's not buying a ton. He bought two 45-pound plates, and then the next week bought two 25-pound plates. But enjoyable person, and that makes it worthwhile.
Yes. Who's been designing the newer equipment? So, for example, we have your original modular functional bars, the trap
Mm-hmm.
bar, and then they've gone through several iterations. So, I think like sometimes you have the coaches giving you guys feedback, then you make changes, but who's the design behind the different bars? Like we have your neutral grip bar, beautiful, smooth. I know we know where to put the middle finger because there's a ring there, little things like that. So who's the designer?
That's a conglomeration of feedback from coaches, feedback from other users, myself, some of my other coworkers, colleagues. It's you can't give the credit to one person.
So
It's
there's no one designer. It's like you
no, no, it's a conglomeration.
who
All of it is.
has there been a strength coach in any of the sectors that has been like the biggest proponent of you guys and also like feedback, giving feedback on design?
Um, I don't know how. I don't know that there's any one person that stands out. I mean, you're a heck of a proponent for us, and I appreciate that. There's other coaches that uh, really go out of their way to help us out and talk good about us, and you know call their colleagues and say, hey man, you need to go with these guys. But as far as feedback, that comes down to what product you're talking about, because like the NutriGret bar, um, we we went to coaches that were using that type of a bar already,
Hmm.
because if you hadn't ever used that type of a bar, your feedback wouldn't be as valuable as somebody that already had. So we went to the people that could give us quality feedback and say, hey, you're using XYZ bar, okay, what would you do different with this bar? How would you improve this bar? And we took that feedback because they had it.
What about,
And
is there something you guys would not do, Jason? For example, I love thick bars. I don't think you guys have ever made fat bars, thick bars, have you?
there's an email in my inbox right now from a number of months ago that needs to be one of the things that we entertain or think about doing.
Very
I have
expensive.
doesn't necessarily have to be, but it could be, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's same thing like the NutriGrit bar. Just because you can make a thick bar doesn't mean that you should. So you have to justify it. But you also want to have something unique, because if you make the same thick bar as everybody else, then what's the point?
If what one thing I'm shocked at is, Donnie Thompson's big proponent of, thick bars and everything, but I'm shocked that I don't see linemen using a lot more neutral grip bars, thick bars. I still see just like it's like we've kind of gone back to more of I just see a lot of straight bars. So when I see a lot of college strength and conditioning films, I see squatting and benching with the straight bar for the most part, cleans, of course, jumping. I feel like there was this kind of era of utilizing specialty bars. And to me, I'm a big proponent. I think we use specialty bars at my gym 75% of the time, even with
Wow.
even with the younger athletes, because I want them to have longevity. I don't want their body to feel achy. And I think if you're using that straight bar only and you don't change it up, eventually it like backfires.
I would say that maybe you're not seeing it at all, but there's a lot of people using the a variation, not necessarily our NutriGrit bar, but a variation of it, and that might be in season for one coach. It might be out of season for another coach, but they're definitely getting used a lot. And again, not necessarily our bar. There's dozens of other options out there. Uh, One of the hotter items that we've seen recently as well is I think it goes along with the shoulder impingement and the lack of mobility is a safety squat bar, and that's not a product that we offer, but there's some good options out there, and there's some good justification. There's some good studies to prove why it's a good piece.
Yeah, I have the original crap, I'm forgetting what it was called, but the guy who invented it was an engineer in Trenton, Jesse
Hmm.
Hoagland. They just called it the
Nope.
Hoagland bar. So it
Wow.
has it has no handles, it just has the pad, and I
Yeah.
think it's somewhere around 70 pounds. So it's a
Whew.
mother effort to move around. It's very difficult to move around. What about you, JB? What's your training like that we're quote unquote older? What's the
Ooh.
yeah, what are you doing?
So I actually did CrossFit for about 10 years. And then when the pandemic hit, uh, things changed because we had to. And I started working more on mobility and feeling good. And I had had some lower back issues, and I decided to say, hey, you know what? I don't need a belt for anything. I don't care how heavy it is. We're going to start from scratch here and build up and have a strong trunk and be healthy moving forward. Low back feels great. My mobility is actually pretty good for most part. My shoulders could improve definitely. My training is I'll get a kind of a mindset in my head of what I'm going to do for that day throughout the day, and then I really don't know what I'm going to do till I go out to the garage because that's where I train now. Is
Yes.
at the pandemic, we've got a bunch of equipment in our garage that takes up two stalls, and I know a guy, okay, where to get
That's,
stuff.
that's
So
right.
so
That is great,
uh,
dude. Kind of
uh
jealous. I want to
yeah,
see some photos.
I'll send them to you. I'll send them
Yep.
definitely. But basically, the training comes down to how do I feel that day? How much time do I have?
Yep.
And what's sore and what's not sore, essentially. And try to keep it balanced. Really, you don't want to neglect certain body parts. You don't want to neglect the cardio. You don't want to neglect anything, but also maintain the feeling good and having good mobility has been probably the foremost thing in the last few years.
Oh yeah. So you're in Iowa, freezing there.
Mm.
You have a heated garage?
We do have a heater in the garage. We didn't the first year that because we moved in 2020 also. And so I used to train a little bit at the other house in the basement, so I didn't have to worry about that. Well,
Right.
we added a rower and a whole bunch of a rig, a bunch of other stuff in our garage now, the different house. And the first year we were in this house, did not have a heater on it. We had a little teeny space heater that you set it out there an hour in advance, and it barely takes the chill
Right.
off in February. You can still see your breath.
I've used them.
I remember having sweatshirts and a stocking hat on and gloves on, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is crazy. I did buy. I don't know who makes it, but I did buy my wife a bar heater. That thing you put over the
I've
bar, you
seen it.
plug it
Yeah.
in. It works great, honestly. It really does.
I saw what's his name sharing one way, when it first came out, Coop. Yeah, Coop from what's his Garage Gym
Oh
Reviews.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I haven't
yeah.
come across his stuff for a while, but you mentioning that space heater, um, when I first started the garage gym was when I lived with my parents. So we're
Right.
talking 2001, 2002. The garage was freezing because it was all cinder blocks. It was actually colder inside than outside. And I remember I had a heater from Costco. In fact, back then, yeah, it was like before that, it was called Price Club. Then it became Costco.
Oh boy.
So I had the same thing, winter gloves, winter hat, multiple layers, like I was about to
Yeah.
go out running during wrestling season. And then I bought another one because, like you're saying, it heats up nothing. You have to be right in front of it to just barely feel it. It's meant for like
Right.
heating up your feet. I bought the second one. I turned it on, it shorted the whole house. And
Oh no.
I remember my dad screaming, Zach, like he knew that
Yeah.
I'm training and I powered off the whole house from those things take up a lot of power.
Yeah.
So I
Our
just
heater now. Oh,
yeah.
sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Our heater now is mounted to the ceiling. It's I
I've
wouldn't
seen
say
them.
it's permanent. You turn it on an hour in advance, and you'll come out and it'll be 60 in the garage. It's
That's
plenty
good.
comfortable. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got a neighbor who's an electrician who helped out with that.
Beautiful. I saw Jason Brown, who does all those online programming. He featured
Right.
something from Home Depot. And same thing. He lives in New Hampshire, so it gets friggin' cold there.
Yeah.
When I bought our first house, my wife and I, the guy before me used to work in the garage on his car with his father-in-law. So what
Mm.
they did was the heating vent went through the garage. They cut out a little rectangle
Yeah.
and it heated up the garage. And all I would do is put up like electric tape over it when I left. but I would be able to train in like shorts and a t-shirt in the winter. But
Yep.
that was a two-car garage. When you mentioned the 90s earlier, JB, this has made me laugh because have you been seeing on Instagram like the videos that say back training in 1990 and it's like heavy barbell, heavy T-bar row, and then it goes back training today and it's like a dude laying on the floor like doing a one-arm cable, pulling to
Oh,
his
yeah,
ear
yeah.
with like
Well,
corny music.
we grew up in a similar area watching
Yep.
Ronnie Coleman and Dorian Yates across the
Yes.
magazines, definitely. But um, I watching Brian Shaw and Eddie Hall with the video spoofs that those guys do is hilarious, and
It was like
some of
History Channel, I think, did it.
yeah, and so some of these other videos that are all over the place of people training is they got to be doing that for attention. I mean,
I
you'd
think
hope
they
that's not
believe it.
real.
It
Oh my
is. I
gosh.
think they believe that that is real. So, talk to me about just the most badass gym you ever trained out of, and it could be a current gym that you guys helped set up, or something from the 80s and 90s.
Oh, that's cinch. Oh, that's he's catching me off guard here.
There's got to be something awesome in the Midwest. Come on, bro.
Uh, so when I was at that gym in the late '90s in Council Bluffs, okay, um, there was a couple that came across the river from Omaha. They had a gym in the middle of Omaha themselves, but this couple came to our gym because they wanted to train while because at their gym they'd get interrupted. They'd look at
Yeah,
something and think they have to clean it. You know, all the things they couldn't get a good
I
training
know.
in.
I know that life.
And I can't remember the name of it, but it the gentleman has passed away, but the girlfriend was Becca Swanson,
Oh,
and
wow.
so what was the name of their gym? Iron something. But you walk in and they've got a pool table and they've got their pit bull laying there. Um,
And they're in
yeah,
Nebraska, or where were they?
um,
North
in
Dakota.
Omaha, in Omaha.
Omaha. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I can't. I know the name started with an
I'll
iron
look it
as the
up.
first. Yeah. So
Okay.
whether it's still there or not, I know Rick Hussey has passed away a number of years ago, and I don't know what Becca Swanson's up to anymore.
Rick Hussey was who Louis Simmons mentioned in Ohio, also like Big Iron. That was
Oh
Ohio.
yeah.
Is that
Well,
was
they
Big
were
Iron?
from Omaha. At
Okay.
least in '98, they were in Omaha,
Okay.
and
I think in that documentary West Side versus the World, Louis Simmons meant if I think it's correct, Rick Hussey's Big
okay,
Iron Gym.
yeah, and I think Becca went on to WWE for a chapter,
Okay.
cup of coffee at least, and she did some bodybuilding and she did some other stuff and may acting as well. But again,
Dang.
you're talking 25 years ago too.
Yep, long time ago. So, now what are you seeing, Jason, with, equipment that's being ordered? For example, we see bumper plates going on like for benches, which
Yes,
part of me is like, if I'm a school administrator, I might say, hey, that's safer, although 45 pounds falling on somebody's foot is 45 pounds. So
right.
what would you recommend? For squat racks, if you do cleans, we had to start getting bumpers, right? So we needed to get bumpers. If I have a bench like at my school, I think our benches are made by York, so they have plate storage. And but we see people putting bumper plates on everything. What would you recommend if somebody's setting up their gym? What plates should they be getting?
I tell you what, that's an argument for a lot of different people right there. Whether you want the skinny steel plate or do you want to go to a bumper, and that kind of depends on the training philosophy. But um, I've always been a big fan of the bumpers because I feel like one day you're going to hit some cleans or hit some deadlifts and you're dropping it. That same 45 pounds is good the next day to be doing bench press or squat with. And I'm never going to be the guy that needs to have a 1 inch wide plate because I'm stacking 6 or 7 on each side of the bar. That's just I'm never going to reach that level. So that's why a bumper works just fine for me. Um, one of the other reasons that we're, especially in athletics, and we're seeing it more in health clubs also, is the transition to using bumpers. They're creating a space that's more functional. And so by putting in a rack or a half rack and 0 to 90 bench, instead of having a dedicated bench press, that space can be used for tons of different movements. Whereas if it's a flat bench press or an incline bench press, that's dedicated to that singular movement. Okay. So, going with, the 35 pounds, we carry them. We don't sell a lot of them. People have essentially eliminated the 35-pound plate or bumper because you
Yes.
need less pegs on your rack, and you can still accomplish it with adding a 10 to a 25. So you're really streamlining the process of, uh, going with 45s, 25s, and 10s, going with just bumpers because they're more functional. They can be used on all the movements.
And also, the truth is, people don't want rusty stuff. I mean, the hardcore gym is super hard to grow into a profitable business. Even little things like this, like wearing a collared shirt. I have a conversation with a good friend of mine, JP Mickel. He said, Zach, like you're the OG of these, warehouse gyms. He's like, but when you're sitting down with people who want to invest and they have money to do that, he's like, it's more likely that it's going to happen when your gym looks clean and you're wearing a collared shirt. He's like, it's just a different conversation. But what did I grow up on? Deep dish Ivanko plates rumbling. But the truth is, I even had a kid this summer saying, can I not touch that bar? There's rust on it. Now I'm having conversations with my buddy to install, air conditioning to try to preserve our equipment better. And really, the reality is people's perception of what is hardcore. It's like that stuff's in usually the business owner's head or your own head.
Yeah.
So, when you're who are you working with? Like what you said, certain people, they want everything looking a certain way. And that's where, a bumper plate that just doesn't have an ounce of rust on it is appealing for a lot of people, especially the people that will keep your business going.
We worked with a gym that opened up not quite a year ago out on the West Coast. That gorgeous place. Um, it is an exclusive gym. It's a very, very high end gym, and people go in there and train hard. Um, I don't know any of the guys' rates or anything like that, but what we've seen, not just in this location, but dozens of other locations throughout our country, is gyms where people want to train hard. They're essentially the uh, anti-planet, call it that.
Yeah.
Um, that the lunkers are there, okay, and so this is a place that back in the 80s would have been dirty, would have had the bulldog laying under the
Yes.
pool table, would
Yep.
have had guys screaming and loud music. This is the same place where you might have a little bit of cardio, but you've got loud music, you've got really cool lighting, really nice machines, and it's clean
Yeah.
because our generation that remembers the late 80s and early 90s remembers that atmosphere, but now we have an expectation of it being clean and of it being a little high end because we can afford it. We want to be in that environment. We want to show our kids that environment, and that's where our friends are going to be. But yeah, it's the root of it is people want to train hard,
Yeah.
and the look of it is a little bit nicer, a
Yes.
lot nicer.
I've said for a long time, hardcore doesn't mean dirty. I love a clean gym that's vacuumed, that's mopped. I just like it. I think it
Yeah.
looks lazy when there's shit around. If and from a business standpoint, if I'm training alone and it's my own garage, that's different, but I'll still take pride in cleaning it. One thing that's, you mentioned the loud music, Jason. The thing that's heartbreakingly lost is, you're wearing AirPods, but in gyms, the camaraderie is gone
Oh yeah.
because everybody is plugged in.
Yeah.
So at my high school, I tell the kids, when we're training as a team, you can't have AirPods or any of that because the reason we're in here is to be together. And so if your music is more important than your teammate, then we ain't got a team. And
Yeah.
so I just say, hey, here's a playlist. You guys make the playlist. You can play whatever music you want, but we're not going to be disconnected from each other.
Yeah.
And
Well
so,
done.
yeah, I grew up in gyms where guys mentored me. And as you know, that's like was the beauty of the 80s and 90s,
Yep.
those guys mentoring. So, we're going to close it out here. So let's get like a little advice because there's people listening to the Strong Life podcast. There might even be people that come to Underground Strength Con that say, you know what? I think I'd do a lot better job if I was part of a company selling their strength training equipment rather than trying to grow my gym business. I want to engage with people, but I want to be part of a company that has this kind of established equipment coming. Well, how would somebody actually apply or even find out for these positions? Or is it all, for example, how did Robbie get hired? Did you say, hey man, you're retiring from phys ed, we could use you? Is that how does it work?
No, no, it didn't. For Robbie's case, it was kind of interesting that we had that position starting right early in the pandemic and never filled it. And then you go through all the changes. We had an owner pass away right before the pandemic started. Our company transitioned from having two buildings down to one, stuff like that. And so we essentially punted and spent the previous 4 years chasing our tail and got to 3 years, got to a point where, hey, I got a green light. Let's talk about adding another salesperson. Okay. What is that going to look like? So what I did one afternoon was I sat on my phone and I started texting a whole bunch of people on my phone and didn't know what to expect, because when we started talking about it, it's not something that's going to happen next week. You got to have the right fit. Okay. And so, Bert Thorne had said this to me many, many, many years ago, where he said, I know a guy, if we're trapped in a submarine and we're good, I know we're good together. And that's taking it out of context, but the principle is you want to bring on somebody that fits the culture. Okay. So I sent out a whole bunch of text messages. I had never met Robbie before. I had seen his name on posts, but I didn't know who he was. And uh, Rich Burnett out of Knoxville, used to be out of Atlanta at GAC. Rich Burnett hit me back on the text. He's like, "Hey, I got a guy that might be interested. I'll connect you to, and we'll see if it works out." And so that was how that happened.
Network is huge. And this is also why people have to get out of their house and get away from their phone. One thing I'm trying to do a lot better because we live in a 2 square mile town is do a ton of stuff with people in our town.
Yeah,
Athletes, like I'm doing an old school PE program with the recreation department for a month to train and run like old school phys ed classes for the kids that are not old enough to train at the underground, training adults. But a lot of people forget, that story, acres of diamonds are in your backyard. They're looking everywhere else. But if you don't have a good network, forget it. Network is huge. Kind of what you said in the beginning. Started with three
yeah,
biggest conference of the year, and you met three people. That's
yeah.
great.
It was trying at the time, but you got to be
Yeah.
resilient. That's it.
Yeah.
That's one of the key factors. If you're passionate, you bring the passion with the resilience, because you'll need it.
That is great. Three became 30. So, Jason Boogerd, Intek Strength. People could go and visit the website. People could, are you active on the DMs of Instagram? How could people reach out to you? What's the best
Um,
way?
they can reach out on DMs on Instagram or Facebook. They can utilize go to the website intekstrength.com and use a connection there. info@intekstrength.com is the email that will come to me. And otherwise, my email address is too long, but I'd give you that as well.
I'll
But
tell you, for anybody listening, if they're like, hey, I forgot what Jason said, you could email me and then I'll just, as Joe DeSena says, he'll be speaking at Underground Strength. And he's like, hey, I'm looping in this guy. And he
Yeah.
just starts looping people in. So I could always
Yeah.
help with an introduction. And like I said, we have Intech Strength at the underground. We've had Intech Strength at the first underground was fully outfitted because we needed bumper plates. We were above a like a basement. So we needed the bumper plates. And we've got Intech Strength. We're starting to slowly build it up at the school, at the high school. And so, it's been awesome. We've known each other for over 10 years, probably like a dozen years now. It's been
Hmm.
awesome. And hopefully you could make it to Underground Strength Con. If not, the easy thing for me is all of our sponsors, they're companies we work with. So I can easily make a commercial for Intech Strength. Got your barbells, your bumpers, got plates, specialty bars. We've pretty much used it all.
Well, dude, I'm gonna be there. I already have a hotel and my
Beautiful.
airfare booked and a rental car. I'm there.
Yes. Good to go. So you'll meet more than three people. That's a guarantee.
Oh, good, good. I'm looking forward to number 4.
That's a guarantee. So everybody listening, go to undergroundstrengthcon.com. You could sign up for the strength conference. Go to intechstrength.com. You can see all the different bars and then go to their Instagram. They will usually feature other people, other universities, high schools, individuals using Intech strength equipment. And if you have any questions about the equipment we have, you can, if you're in the area, you could actually come to the underground and test the equipment.
There you
It's
go.
like a real world showroom. So we have Intech weightlifting bars. We have their bumpers, obviously. The trap bars we have are the older models. Um, I don't know how recent your newer ones are, but the older ones have, they were the lower ones. Then we got the higher ones, which we actually used during our fundraiser. And I think now you have the bars, the handles are like middle of both, but people could come and use it. And then, of course, the neutral grip bar, which is awesome.
Very good. Thanks, Zach. I appreciate the opportunity.
It is awesome. All right, team. Thank you for listening. Also, anybody who leaves a 5-star review, there you are automatically entered a chance to win something. Free training course, could be membership. I might win, give something else. What else, Jason? What else? Anything else you were going to say or no? We're shutting it down.
No, no, 5 stars. Five
Five
star review
stars.
right there. 5.
5-star review. We've given away I give away like old training courses like The Way to Live from George Hackenschmidt, who by the way only used body weight and a barbell or a short barbell. It was like a hybrid
Stubby.
dumbbell. Yep,
Yeah.
hybrid dumbbell barbell. 5 stars and that's it. Thanks to everybody. Jason, hang tight while we shut it down and to everybody else, we hope to see you at the Underground Strength Conference. Jason will be there.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
All right, to be continued. Talk to everybody soon.